Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be testing out the new Natasha Denona Mini Eye Sculpt Eyeshadow Palette. So this is now available at Ulta, Sephora, Beautylish. This is also available on the Natasha Denona website. If you do order from her website, I do have my code Christy that can save you 15%. If you're in Canada, I do always recommend Beautylish because you get that free shipping. So I do recommend that option if you are in Canada. But this does retail for $27 US or 40 Canadian. This has a 24-month shelf life and is made in Italy. And this is her very first all matte neutral eyeshadow palette. I was happy to see this because I do love a good matte eyeshadow palette, and this is in her standard mini palette packaging, and the background is more of a glossy white. I was kind of thinking it was going to be that soft touch matte that she sometimes does on these, but it is just a glossy white plastic. Now, these three shades here are in her standard matte formula, and then these two lighter shades on the bottom are in her silky matte formula, which is her newest formula. I did look into these, and these three deeper shades are actually pre-existing in her line, so we'll get into those details a bit later, but I did just want to share that with you. So let's take a look at some swatches. We will create a look on the eyes, and then I will show you some comparisons. So going lightest to deepest, we have Fair in the silky matte formula, Light in the silky matte formula, Medium in her classic matte formula, and this is from the Mini Dream palette. Deep is in her classic matte formula, and this is from the Biba palette. And Black in the classic matte formula, and this is from the My Dream palette. So I do think this is a really gorgeous staple matte palette, but let me zoom you in and we will create a look on the eyes and then get into some comparisons. So typically I like to do multiple looks when I'm reviewing a new palette, but since this is a classic all matte palette, I think what we can do is I can sort of create the exact same look on both eyes, but we'll just gradually make it deeper and deeper so you can kind of go from no makeup to a bit more of an everyday to a more smokier kind of look, if that makes sense. So I do just really quickly want to prime my eyes with my Alter Ego eyeshadow base. I am almost out of this. They did very kindly send me a backup, so I am very grateful for that. But I am just going to set my lids with this, and then just making sure it's evenly all over my lids. Normally I would set that down with a powder, but I'm actually just going to grab this one on a large fluffy brush, and I'm just going to kind of use that one to set my primer. Just going to lightly dust it all over, and that should help clear up any sort of discoloration I've got going on. And if we were to use a more dense brush, this shade should be able to handle its own a little bit better, so I will show you that as well. So then we're going to start with the shade Light, which is also that silky matte. And I'm going to start working this one into the crease. So this first part is going to be our more no makeup look. If you just wanted something very soft and subtle, just to give you a little bit of definition, but you don't want to look like you're wearing too much makeup. With my skin tone, this is a perfect shade for that. This is a perfect transition. And whether I use it as a transition or just a little bit of a defining shade, that works well also. I do love a good all matte palette. I think they can be such a staple to have in any collection because they can stand on their own if you love all matte looks, but they can also be great companions. They can also give you that perfect base when you want to go in with some of your shimmery single shadows, which I actually have quite a few of those more single shadows. I almost feel like we are sort of swinging back to that time when single shadows were super popular, which is always kind of fun. And I definitely have a lot of those, so I do like to work with those. So you can see this shade just gives me a really nice amount of definition, and it really is a very true neutral. So you can see I just have a very soft amount of definition in the crease. I'm going to grab a more dense brush now and go back into that first shade, which is Fair, because I do want to use this all over the lid. I want it to brighten that inner corner, but I also want to bring it up and have it be more of that lid shade. The day that I'm filming this too is actually December 27th. So I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, and I hope you're still enjoying some time off. I feel like it's been so hard to kind of do anything productive. So I'm definitely taking my time off very seriously. But I am trying to edit my year-end palette ranking video, and it's kind of a beast. So it will be up probably next. It's just taking me forever to edit. And obviously because this one came in so late, this palette will just have to be in next year's ranking. See, that cream shade worked really, really well to give sort of a translucent set to my eye primer, but then when I went in with a more dense brush, it just gave me a really, really beautiful shade for my whole lid. It just looks very, very clean, and we have that soft little bit of definition. Now, she was also really reinforcing on her Instagram stories that these are very buildable, so I really want to test that out a little bit. So I do want to go into the light shade just a little bit more, and I just want to try to get a little bit more in the crease with this one. That actually is building quite nicely. It's not giving me anything too intense. I don't think I can get anything too intense with this shade, but it definitely does build up pretty nicely. So I could easily just pop on some mascara and have a very clean, sort of almost no makeup type look, but I do want to keep building, so we're going to go into that medium shade right here. And this is the one that's in the mini Dream palette. So working this one up into the crease, not as high as the light shade, but also building the outer corner. This shade is also really, really nice because it's, again, a very true neutral shade. It's not going to pull orange, but it's not too cool toned. It's just a perfect neutral shade. And these shades are reminding me an awful lot of the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes, the neutrals, just in the way it gives that sort of true neutral effect, which is something I always appreciate. And as a reminder, this medium shade is also the classic matte, so we're done with the silky mattes. Okay, that gave a really nice amount of definition on the outer corner, and once again I could stop here and just pop on some mascara and have a perfect everyday going to the office type look. I just think it looks so nice. It's just a perfect, very smooth blend. Again, we've got that sort of true neutral browns going on, which is just my favorite. And that medium shade also built up very, very well. If you are a fan of Natasha Denona eyeshadows and you really enjoy her matte formulas, this is definitely up to her typical quality. All right, so there we have our classic everyday look, going to the office, doing whatever you're doing, but perfect, flattering, easy, everyday look. Let's make it a little bit more deep and smoky. So I'm going to go into this shade right here. This is the shade Deep, and it is just a really beautiful, deep, chocolatey brown. And I'm going to start working this one on that outer corner. This brush is probably a little bit too large for what I'm thinking of. I'm just going to grab a slightly different brush. This is a clean brush, and I'm just going to sort of blend that crease a little bit more. The nice thing about working with all mattes is you don't necessarily need to worry about any fallout sometimes, but and then same thing on this side, just blending that outer corner, just making it really deep. Okay, now we've got that deep shade blended on that outer corner, and I definitely think that gave us a lot of depth, at least for me. Keep in mind, I am very, very fair, so to me this is a lot of depth, but you definitely can build this to get a lot more, and if you wanted to go so much smokier, you could definitely go in with that black shade. I want to use the black as a liner because that is what I would do with this one. So now we're getting into that black. And I do love to use black shadows as more of a liner. You can also use it to deepen that outer corner even more. I'm just taking an angled brush and working this very close to the lash line just to give myself that definition. Okay, I just did a little baby wing. It was more of a wing than I intended. But that is a really good black. It's very intense. It's very, very black, and it's very easy to work with as well. This black I find At least in the My Dream palette, it did not swatch well. From here, it did though. So I don't know if she's just improved on it a little bit, but I do think this is a really lovely black. All right, so I just finished up the liner and then of course added some mascara, and this is the final look. This is what I would do for an all matte look if I wanted to go as smoky as I could. Of course, if you wanted to go even smokier, you could put the black in the outer corner and just blend it and really get that depth. For me, I often find that look just looks a little bit too harsh on me personally, but just because I'm so fair, so I do prefer a bit of a liner moment, and I think this looks nice. So I really like this. I like how it turned out, and I do think the quality on this was really, really beautiful to work with. So let me zoom you out and we will talk about some comparisons. All right, so like I mentioned, this palette is very, very beautiful, and this is Natasha's first all matte palette. We definitely have a ton of neutral palettes from Natasha, but these three shades on the deeper end are pre-existing in her line. These two I didn't find in my collection, but they are very common shades that I think you can find in a lot of different palettes. The middle shade in this palette, so the medium shade right here, is in the My Mini Dream palette. So this one right on the end. So this is last year's palette that came out around this time, and that medium shade came from this palette. In this palette, it is called Nurture. The black shade in this palette came from the My Dream palette. So the blackest black up here, that's the same black that is in this new palette. And the shade Cocoa from Biba is the deep shade in this palette. So the one right beside the black. So I will pop up those swatches so that you can see what I'm talking about. They are absolutely identical shades. So if you do have these three palettes, you do have a good portion of these. Now for comparisons, I did pull the two all matte palettes that I reference the most, that I use the most. And the first one I had to pull was the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes, the neutrals. So I don't have the first Master Mattes palette he came out with, but the neutrals is a favorite because though it does have some cool leaning shades, this is a really, really beautiful true neutral palette. Very much like this one. So I found them to be quite similar shade-wise. I don't think I got 100% shade for shade dupes, but am I going to be able to create pretty much the exact same look with both palettes? Absolutely. So if you already have this one, I would recommend skipping the mini eye sculpt. I just think that you of course get more options in the Mario, but you're going to be able to create a lot of very, very similar looks. The Natasha is going to be so good for travel because it's just this tiny little size and it's an excellent formula. In terms of the formula, I do like Natasha a little bit better. I do find her shades to be a little bit more pigmented. You can see from the swatches, the Mario palette does not swatch well whatsoever, but on the eyes, it performs beautifully. It's an excellent palette, and I do really enjoy this. I think this one is such a staple. It does have that white packaging as well, so it does get really, really messy, particularly if you use it a lot like I use mine. So just keep that in mind. If you do have the Mario, you can definitely skip the Natasha Denona. Like I said, I do prefer Natasha's formula, but there is not one thing wrong with the Mario formula whatsoever. The other palette I absolutely had to compare this to is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 3 palette. So this is Patrick Ta's all matte palette. And I love the Patrick Ta matte formula. These are just so incredibly buttery and easy to blend and easy to work with and so pigmented. I might actually prefer his matte formula to Natasha's. Hers is such a staple, and I've always said Natasha Denona has my favorite eyeshadow formula overall, and that's very true. But comparing the mattes, Patrick Ta might be just a little bit better, but I don't feel like he competes in the shimmer department, so she still wins. So formula-wise, these are very comparable. Obviously with Patrick Ta, you're getting a lot more shades, you're getting a lot more product, you even get these cream shades. I don't like these cream shades whatsoever because I feel like if you use them as a liner, they instantly transfer down, and I just have no patience for that. But I do think you can get some very, very similar shades. Again, looking at the swatches, I didn't get shade for shade dupes, but much like the Mario, I'm going to be able to create some very, very similar looks with both palettes. I think if I had one on one eye and one on the other, you really wouldn't be able to tell which was which. So if you also have the Patrick Ta, I don't think you need this. That being said, if you're someone who does travel a lot, this could be a great option because it is so tiny and compact, and I think it's perfect. I love that the minis do come with this clear lid so you can always see what you're reaching for. And again, this is just an excellent solid formula. I think the range of shades in here is perfect, and I love that she really leaned into those true neutrals. If you have the Patrick Ta and the Makeup by Mario, then no, you definitely don't need it. And if you have the other Natasha palettes I mentioned, then you probably don't need it at all because you already have 3 of the shades. But if you are looking for an all matte essential palette that is so easy to reach for, has all the shades you're going to need, and is just very easy to work with, I think this is a great one. If, like I said, if you travel a lot, this is a good one. This is a beautiful palette. I like the size. I like that it's 5 shades. That really does cover a broad range. I think matte palettes are such a staple, whether you want to create an all matte look, whether you just want something in the crease every day, whether you have a lot of palettes that are just missing that one essential shade. A matte palette is such a staple. And if you have a lot of single shimmer shadows, a matte palette can always come to the rescue and round that out for you. So most of us have these shades in our collection in some form or another. Doesn't matter, you probably do have these. So I do not think this palette is an absolute need, but if you're looking for that essential matte neutral palette, this could be a great one. I do think it's excellent quality. I think it's a great little staple, and it's a good one that I will probably leave on my desk for when I get playing with my individual shadows. I feel like we really are seeing a bit of a resurgence in these single shadows, so I think this could be a staple for me if I end up trying out more of those. But that is it for me today. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Did you pick this one up? Are you skipping this one altogether? Let me know. I just love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!